All right, so we're at the start of the second session, breakout session. Welcome to session 1, lessons learned and how to fail faster. Short introduction of people on our side. So I'm Giovanni Huisken. I'm the Deputy Project Manager for Socrates and also pilot site leader for Amsterdam. And next we have
Jan Maarten van den Berg. I work at Rijkswaterstaat. And in the Socrates project, I was the leader for multiple teams on the designs, on the cooperation models, business models, etc.
Yes. And I am Henk-Jan Kwakenaat. I work for Rijkswaterstaat. And within Socrates, I was mostly involved with the evaluation part of it.
Okay, thank you, guys. So what's this session all about? Well, we have selected some 8 topics, and we're going to give you some more insight about that in a few minutes. You can choose which one of those 8 you want to hear, but Jan Maarten will give you a bit more information about it. And well, without further ado, I would like to say please do the introduction, Jan Maarten.
Yes, okay, thanks. So this breakout session is all about some topics we have highlighted for you. So if you have any question, Henk-Jan will pick them up and we will answer them in the chat, or we'll answer them here in the live chat. So yeah, that's basically it. So let's start to show the topics. Slide 3, please. So here we have the 8 topics that we have selected for you. You can pick 3, and you just state that in the chat, and we will pick that up. In the meantime, we're gonna do a small pitch on those 8 topics. Giovanni, can you pitch the first one? You are on mute.
I thought I wasn't going to do this, but yeah, there we go again. Okay, so yeah, before I give some insight on the topics, I want to say one statement. There were some technical issues, and it might be the case that also during this session. We hopefully it will not be, but rest assured we are recording every session. So in case something is not going very smoothly, you are always able to view it afterwards. Okay, that being said, first topic is upon impact and value. And the impact and value topic is about establishing the impact that an individual partner contributes to the overall goal of the service or the use case. So for this purpose, we have introduced a new intermediary role called the assessor. And along with the assessor, we have the waterfall report, which is used to do that, to establish the added value of a partner within the objective of the use case / service. Second topic is prediction, and this topic was part of only one use case, the optimizing network traffic flow use case in Amsterdam. And the idea was that if you have a prediction lookout window from, say, around 20 minutes, you have time to activate measures that can be used to balance the traffic over your network that you have at your disposal, leading towards a better optimum of that traffic over the network. Next item.
Yeah, so the third topic is about a service request. And a service request is a specific message type that we have designed in Socrates, and it's really used for the coordinated approach. So on one hand, we have the network manager. That's the partner who oversees the performance of the network, and the service request is a way to asking other partners to help in solving the network problem.
Okay, fourth topic is roadworks. So the roadworks use cases were executed in 3 pilot cities in Amsterdam, Antwerp, and Munich. So we have multiple sources for roadworks at each of those pilot sites. And we also have some learnings due to geographical differences between those use cases, but also some overall findings related to roadworks. Next topic is standardization, and that's about sending and receiving messages between partners so that they are fully aware of each other's needs or requests. And obviously standards bear the promise in them that they are used uniformly. However, we have learned that this is not always the case. Some things about using standards are not very uniformly executed. Next topic.
Yeah, so the next topic is about environmental zone, which is actually a very good example of standardization of information. Well, on this topic, we're going to talk about the environmental zone in Amsterdam that is in place for trucks. And in Socrates, we discovered what kind of information you need to gather, and also how to package it in a message, and how to distribute it to service providers. And also, I will give some insights on how to scale this up. Number 7 is also my topic. It's about the governance. Well, the governance is all about how to implement a Socrates interactive traffic management solution in another region. So within the Socrates context, we had 4 pilot sites with multiple use cases. But the idea of this topic is how can you transfer the Socrates implementations to other cities? So what are the generic lessons learned on how to start with such a thing? And also I want to talk. I'm going to talk a little bit on the business side of it.
Okay. Well, last topic from those 8 that we selected is cooperation management, and cooperation management is all about how to manage the project and also the consortium partners. So it's about the cooperation as a whole and how to manage it during such a project. And that concludes our 8 topics. And well, again, please make your choice and put it in the chat box, and Henk-Jan will have a look at it and come back once everything is clear. Jan Maarten, next slide, I guess.
Yes, next slide, please. So while we'll wait for the results to come in, because there's a delay of 20-30 seconds, we're going to explain the building blocks. So in Socrates, our work is based around the concept of interactive traffic management, which is basically the cooperation between public and private partners in the area of traffic management, where you really want to cooperate in order to align actions and align strategies. So for this, we added 4 new roles in the organizational framework on top of 3 traditional roles. So if you look at this scheme, you can see the data providers left below. Well, there could be multiple partners fulfilling this role, and this role is all about collecting data. The next role is the network monitor. The network monitor is a trusted partner who collects the data. He can filter it, and he can enrich the data, making sure that the data is fit for, well, different kinds of use cases. In this case, we talk about the coordinated approach, so we also need more roles. So the network manager is the next one up. The network manager has basically two tasks. The first one is to determine the problem state. So what's the problem based on the current situation and the desired situation, which is based on KPIs from the strategy table. The second task of the network manager is about fixing that problem or coming up with solutions that are able to solve that problem. And the generic solution is transferred to service requests, which is a generic request of action for team Cs and service providers alike. So the team Cs and service providers receive a service request, which is very generic, as I said, and they are the ones who translate it to concrete advices for road users. And the team C, by example, is translating that to a text on the VMS, by example. So those 5 first roles are basically the operational backbone of your corporation. And on top of that, we have introduced some new roles, which is the assessor and the strategy table. And they are more or less in place to make sure that the corporation stays healthy. The assessor is there to assess the impact of the corporation, the impact of the service request, sends it through the the strategy table, and the strategy table is where all partners come together and decide if this is the right direction for the corporation. And if it's the case, then okay, it's good job. If it's not the case, there's an opportunity always to steer to steer the corporation in a slightly different direction. Okay, so this is an overview of the roles. Let's go back to Henk-Jan with the results.
Yeah, the results, we don't have that many votes, but what I see, we can start with the standardization, number 5 on the list. And then also, because we did not discuss that in the first session, we go on to the environmental zone.
Yes,
number 6.
Number 6.
And then we can follow that up with prediction, number 2, and the service requests.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So, and when we talk, we already have one question about the service requests, so we can
let's
maybe answer that first. Do service providers and traffic management centrals receive the same service requests?
Yes.
If so, how is it ensured that actions taken by both fit together?
Well, the service requests to team Cs are different from the service providers, from the service requests that are sent to the service providers. However, the service requests to the service providers are all the same. And how do you coordinate this? The short answer is that the network manager takes care of the coordination. So the network manager has got, which is basically a system, and takes into account multiple solutions. So it's, on one hand, he is looking at the problem state, and he will try to solve that problem by combining all those available services. And if he finds a good fit of services that can really solve that problem, then those services are requested. And so in that case, you can make sure that the services are in line on a certain level. But there can be some contradictions, but that's a detail. But I will we will talk about service request later.
Yeah, okay, so then you have time to elaborate on that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for putting up the right slide. Okay, so we're now talking about standardization, and where it's most applicable is where the purple arrows are located. So between the network monitor and the network manager, there are messages going from left to right. And also from the network manager, we have the service requests that Jan Martin just spoke about, that are going towards the TMCs, so the traffic management centers and the service providers. And obviously from there on towards the end users. Okay, next slide, please. So there we have standardization. Well, I already mentioned that standardization seems to bear within it that everything is going smooth and uniformly. Well, not so, unfortunately. The first learnings that we had is, keep the messages that you want to standardize as simple as possible. What we did in this case was the messages that go from the network manager to the TMCs, to the traffic management centers. We kept them as is for the time being during this project. And that meant that's not only for Amsterdam, but also for the other cities. In Amsterdam, we already have the DVM exchange standard in place. It's also based more or less on Datex. I mean, it has some footage in it, but we did not want to try to alter that standard towards completely Datex to whatever version, because it would have taken a lot of time and a lot of effort for something which is well, the purpose is still the same with the DVX exchange. So we did not alter that. However, we did not have messages that were directly going from the network manager towards the service providers. So what we did there, we used the standard, and we used Datex2 as the underlying standard. Now, the service requests were made up of specific routes to be taken or to be avoided. Jan Martin will come back to this service request item a bit later on, but keep in mind that it's about the routes to follow by end users. Now, when you use Datex2, there are certain versions in place. For instance, in the Netherlands, quite a big chunk of legacy systems are using version 2.3. In other countries, mostly lower standards are used. So there you also have that your standard is not standard. And then you have the usage or the profile of the standard itself, which is also different between countries and different between partners even. So we feel that although there are standards, that there's quite some winning to do by using it more uniformly. And our recommendation will also go into the Datex2 community and also to the European Commission. Having said that, we also encountered another problem. It was more or less a problem. And that was the use of map-agnostic georeferencing technique. Up front, we thought, okay, we need something map-agnostic because we have certain service providers on board which use different maps. So we have here on board, we have TomTom, we have B-Mobile, BMW, etc. And we thought, well, we have to make use of one standard that has a map-agnostic technique. So OpenLR came to mind. That's the one we also implemented. Well, in the end, it turned out that it's not so simple to encode and decode routes into OpenLR as we would have thought. So this is also what you would call a fast fail. If you are going to use OpenLR, please make sure that you have some specialists within your consortium or within your team that is able to work with the OpenLR standard if you're using something map agnostic. And that's more or less it for standardization, unless there are some urgent questions, Miguel.
I don't see urgent questions at the moment.
Okay,
so I think we can go on to the environmental zone. So.
Yeah, okay, and if there are questions, it's still possible to get them in the chat box or afterwards in the Socrates Cafe. Okay, Jan-Maat.
Yeah, thanks, Giovanni. Yeah, the environmental zone information. That's a use case that we did in Amsterdam. It's a bit smaller than the other one, but I think we really learned a lot here. So yeah, it's the focus here is on the data providing, but also on the network monitor side. Next slide, please. And also for this use case, you can find some elaborate information on the website of Socrates. There are multiple articles on this use case. So here I'm just going to highlight some of the learnings here. So basically, we have the city of Amsterdam, NDW, B-Mobile, and TomTom as the 4 partners who were working together in this use case. And the purpose was to make sure that truck drivers get the right legal information on the status of the environmental zone. And it sounds pretty easy. And so we decided to make it a little bit harder for ourselves. So in this case, we also included a dynamic route as part of the message. So in the picture, you can see the whole zone, and on the right you see the dynamic zone. But also due to Corona, the dynamic zone was not activated, so we couldn't really test it. But it was interesting anyhow. So I think we learned something there. So the first topic here is that information from the city of Amsterdam is published on their website, and it looks like that you can really use it. You can really use it. It's in GeoJSON, if I'm correct, and the coordinates are already there. But if you just put that data in a navigation system, then it doesn't work. And the reason is that the polygons that is used for defining the zone are, well, all over the place, basically, because if you really zoom into a map, then you can see that the coordinates are not precise enough for turn-by-turn navigation. So the first thing we did is to make sure that the data from Amsterdam was proper. So all the coordinates should really be in line with the legal boundaries of the zone, and that was a pretty tough job for in this case NDW to make sure that the data was correct again. And also part of that, because we actually changed the environmental zone here, we brought that back to the city of Amsterdam to ask for legal approval again, because this is what service providers can use, and the older information was not really usable. So in order to, so the first step was to make sure the data is correct, and the second step was to put it in the right profile. And for this, we used the DataX ROS profile, and it was really useful. So we didn't face many problems here. We tried to incorporate the dynamic zone, but that gave some problems. But as I said, due to Corona, we couldn't really test it. So let me think. The advice here for this type of project is to really focus on the legal part. I mean, if you look at controlled zones, if you look at aerial information, then the information is not really precise. So if you want to scale this up on a European level, then the advice is to look at legal zones first, where you really have some basis to to inform people about. So yeah, that's about it for this use case.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Jan Maarten. I think I can go on to item 2, prediction, right, Henk-Jan? No new.
Right.
Okay, great. Yeah, please go to slide 7. Yeah, thanks. Okay, the prediction part is where the purple arrow is. So it's at a network monitor. It either receives prediction states or it fuses or makes them itself. During the Socrates project, and more specifically during the optimizing network traffic flow use case in Amsterdam, we had 3 prediction engines to our disposal, and we would like to have some sort of findings about all 3 of them, because they were more or less unique from themselves. So we had a prediction engine that was based on a traffic model. We had a prediction engine that was based on historical data. We had a prediction engine that was based on artificial intelligence with historical data that were learned with neural nets, etc. So 3 more or less distinct prediction engines, and we spent quite some effort in configuring those engines, especially the traffic model one. Took quite some time and effort and energy to get it right. To dive into that, maybe we can go to slide 10 to make sure that I... Yeah, on the left-hand side you see the map of Amsterdam. Well, if you do want to predict, what you usually do is you make use of the motorway network, right? So we also did that for Amsterdam. But there's something else in this network, and that's the city routes. And in the end, we had more or less, like I think, 140 routes or
links.
Yeah. And for each link, we had to make a prediction. But that's quite difficult if you don't have any information about those links that are in the city itself. So also secondary roads, not that much information on it. And the biggest part was, please go 2 slides up again. The biggest part was that traffic was gone. Oh, sorry. I meant slide 8. Yeah, thanks. Due to Corona. So once we had the engines in place and they were more or less calibrated, it turned out that the outcomes of the prediction engines was not that feasible, because they were calibrated on traffic that took place before the pandemic. So a highly saturated network, and now suddenly no saturation anymore, no congestion anymore. Prediction is quite easy. You just predict no congestion and you're right for almost every time, except for incidents. So yeah, that was a bummer for us as a project, because we were looking forward to this prediction testing very much. Several consortium partners looked forward to this, and then suddenly, yeah, COVID struck. In the end, it didn't have added value prediction within that situation, so we had to let the testing of those prediction engines go. But hopefully we can do this in the future, because it's still a very promising idea. You can imagine if you have lookout period of 15 or 20 minutes. And you see that, for instance, if you have the motorway or ringway around Amsterdam, we see that on the western side, the ring road is saturated and congested. Then obviously you can steer some part of the traffic towards the eastern side. That makes perfectly sense, I guess. Now we didn't have the availability of those predictions, and also no congestion. So in the end, it was not possible for us to test those prediction engines. And I leave it with this, I guess. Yeah. So Jan Maarten, you can go to the service request.
Yep. No questions, Henk-Jan?
No questions at the moment. No.
Okay, good. Okay, let's talk about the service requests. That's on slide number 9 first. Yes, thanks. So service requests are right between the network manager and the service providers and the TMCs. So this is basically the data feeds that we talk about. And as you can see, it's really important because it's right in the middle of the whole cooperation. And it's a bit strange because on one hand, it's a very important piece of technology or functionality you need to install or make sure it's working. But on the other hand, it's also pretty simple to do. So I'm glad to spend some words on that. So next slide, please. So if you look at the service request, it's basically a type of function. If you look at data, then you can say, well, it's just data streaming from one partner to the other. And in this case, the network manager to service providers and TMCs. However, the trick here is that it's not just data. It's a requested action. So what you really want is that the next partner in line is doing something and is really activating some measures on the road or in car or etc. And in doing so, you start a chain reaction basically, because if road users are following that request, then you can see a change in your traffic flows. And if you see that, then the assessor will pick that up and the assessor can see if that's the right direction or not. And then it feeds back into the network manager, where the network manager, has a good overview of what's going on. So it's basically the starting point of a very important value chain. And you can also talk about sharing. So this is service requesting. And the alternative is basically where you share a function. This is also what we did in Socrates, but it means that, by example, a TMC, there's an incident, and there's a detour active. So the TMC activates the VMSs, activates the road signs, and it will just tell service providers or the general public that there is a measure or a service active, which is the diversion route. That's basically sharing your service, and that's important to do. And that's also something the network manager takes into account, because the current active services are part of the strategy that the network manager needs to figure out in terms of what's the next step for the network. But as I said, service requesting is the step after that. So it's something to do with proactive traffic management, where you look into the future, where you talk about measures that needs to be taken. So that's a key component and how you can distinguish the two from each other. But both use the same data model in DADEX, but the service request is far more simple. I think we just used 10% of the data model. It's just saying, well, we have a problem here, so that's the geographical reference, and that's broadcast. Well, that's stated in OpenLR, as Giovanni was saying, and the other one is you need to avoid this section. That's basically is it. We have another variant, which is to reroute. And in that message, we also ask TMCs and service providers to take an alternative route, which is predefined. Well, for most service providers, this is possible, but on the other hand, it's not what they are used to do because it's interfering with the routing algorithm. So it goes one level deeper into the engines of service providers. And it's not a big technical issue, I would say, but it's more or less a slightly different process for them. So it's in the end also learning and trusting each other that needs to be in place before you can do this. What else to talk about? Okay, so we have two pictures here. The first one is Amsterdam. And there you can see a lot of links. All the little colors, all those colors are links. And for each of those links, we can send a service request. And we also bunched up a couple of links together in one route. And also the route can be sent out as a service request to avoid or reroute traffic from that particular route. Those two, so the link and the route, are the main element for the service request to service providers. For the TMCs, it's slightly different. As Giovanni already said, for the TMCs, we use the DVM exchange profile, which is a Dutch profile, but it's also implemented in Denmark. So it's already going international. But it's a pretty simple protocol that TMCs use to transfer information. But it's basically 1 or 0, and it's basically asking a TMC to turn on or turn off a particular service or scenario. So the DVM exchange also uses an identifier, so the TMC knows what service they need to activate. But in that case, you need to know on two sides of the information chain what kind of service you mean. Otherwise, you cannot use such a lean profile. So in Antwerp used a very broad service request, asking people to go around the ring road using the Kennedy tunnel or use the Liefkenshoek tunnel. And also in Copenhagen, we had different types of service requests asking road users to avoid a particular route in case there was an environmental issue or in case of a lot of people on bicycles. They had a way in identifying bicycles. And if they observed a lot of bicycles on a particular route, then they would send car users. They were advised to use another route. I think that's a brief overview of the service request.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There was one question about the service requests. Do they also account for environmental, social, policy goals? But I think you just answered that question. So.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's what we basically did in Antwerp. Sorry, in Antwerp. No, that was not Antwerp.
Copenhagen, I guess.
Yeah. Copenhagen. Yeah. So the KPIs were based on environmental indicators. So yes, that's absolutely possible, and it doesn't really matter actually what you use. The network manager technology that we used for Amsterdam and Copenhagen were exactly the same. And in Amsterdam, we use we use different KPIs, but mainly the KPIs were about accessibility and traffic flows. And in Copenhagen, it was principle based on emissions, CO2. There were some sensors in place that were used for the network manager to know which routes were well polluted, and yeah, so people could avoid that. And you can also have a mix of that, of course. For the system, it doesn't really matter actually. Yeah.
Okay, we have a little time left. I think one topic we did not discuss in both sessions yet. So maybe something about roadworks, Giovanni.
Yeah. Let's see. We have something. Okay, a few minutes. Maybe you can go to slide 11. Thank you. Yeah. So roadworks. Yeah. Okay. So it's mainly about data providing. What we did within roadworks was fuse data from several data providers, come up with one a more generic or more truthful picture about roadworks. At least that was the idea. So we have public and private service providers that are sharing their data, and it's all going to the network monitor that tries to fuse the data. Next slide, please. So what we found that it is possible for competing private data providers to exchange data. That in itself was already quite a big plus, I guess. You have to remember that we are using several data providers that are, well, fighting a piece of market with each other. If you have TomTom and Here and Be-Mobile all in one consortium, data is quite important. That can also be said about the consortium agreement that we had to build before we could go to work with this. It took quite some time, especially for the legal departments. But then again, once it was done, the trust was building up, as already mentioned by Jan Maarten, and that really helped in working together within the consortium itself, and also in this use case. A neutral party performed the network monitor role and collected the data from the data providers, public and private, and tried to make a complete picture out of it. Also here we got some problems with standardization, because it turned out that service providers and public data providers are not using the same standard, which is logical. And also here we had the geographical map agnostic tool that we used, which was not straightforward, to say the least. In the end, we did find that roadworks and information was overlapping, and therefore the newly fused data was more enriched. However, in the end was still difficult to establish if certain roadworks were the same roadworks if you have two different sources, and it's 1 or 2 kilometers apart, then yeah, it can be the same roadwork, but it can also be a different one. Especially in Germany, you have quite some long stretches of roadworks, and nowadays in the Netherlands also going that way, but they used to be far more shorter in the old days. So then you still have your decision to make. Is this the same roadworks? And well, since you can't inspect for yourself with your eyes every roadwork that is coming from a source, this proved to be quite difficult. So that's something to be looked at in the future, I guess. I think we have to stop right now because time is running out. Yeah. So thanks all for participating in this session. And we go back to the plenary session. You can do that by switching on the knob at the website, I guess, right? So there's a click button and you can use it and go back to the plenary session. And we'll meet Tiffany and friends in a few moments. So
Yes.
once again, thank you for participating. And if you have questions afterwards, let's go to the Socrates Cafe.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.